Hello, today we're covering Latent Class Analysis, LCA, one of the most powerful and most underused segmentation methods in market research. It's the probabilistic alternative to cluster analysis, and it's particularly well suited for behavioral and categorical data. By the end, you'll understand what makes it different, how it works, how to read the output, and how to use the segments it produces. Let's start with the problem it solves. Here's an honest truth about segmentation that most methods quietly ignore. Real people don't fit neatly into one box. A customer who buys plant-based milk weekly, sticks mostly to one brand, but occasionally experiments with a competitor, isn't definitively a loyal buyer or a switcher. They're somewhere in between. Traditional segmentation methods like k-means cluster analysis assign every respondent to exactly one segment, regardless of how close to the boundary they sit. That rigidity produces clean-looking segments that, on closer inspection, contain quite different people who got lumped together because the algorithm had to put them somewhere. Latent class analysis takes a different approach. Instead of forcing every respondent into one rigid group, it assigns probabilities. How likely is this person to belong to each class? A respondent might be 72% likely to belong to Class 1 and 28% likely to belong to Class 2. That probability reflects genuine ambiguity. The data suggests this person shares characteristics of both types. That's not a weakness of the model. It's a more honest and more realistic description of how human behavior actually works. Not everyone is clearly one type, and LCA is a segmentation method that accepts that. Latent class analysis is a statistical method that identifies hidden subgroups, called latent classes, within a population, based on patterns in how people answered categorical survey questions. The word latent is important. The classes aren't directly observed. You can't ask someone which segment they belong to. Instead, their pattern of responses across a set of categorical questions reveals their underlying type. The method infers the classes that best explain all the response patterns it observes, and then assigns each respondent a probability of belonging to each one. The concept of latent variables is worth understanding directly. Something is latent when it can't be directly observed but can be inferred from things that can be observed. In LCA, the latent class is a hidden type of customer, their true underlying type. The observable effects of that type are the survey responses they give. A customer who buys weekly sticks to one brand, recommends to friends, and hasn't switched recently and is almost certainly a fundamentally loyal type of buyer. Even though we never ask them, "Are you loyal?" their behavior reveals their latent class. LCA works backward from observable responses to infer the hidden types. It's worth being clear about how LCA compares to k-means cluster analysis, since both are segmentation methods and people often ask which to use. K-means works best with continuous data, rating scales, numerical variables, and assigns every respondent to exactly one cluster with hard, definitive boundaries. LCA works natively with categorical data, yes-no responses, multiple choice answers, frequency bands like daily, weekly, monthly, and assigns probabilities rather than hard memberships. Neither method is universally better. The choice depends on the data. If your segmentation survey uses primarily rating scales, k-means is the natural fit. If it uses behavioral and categorical questions, LCA will almost always produce cleaner, more interpretable results. Let's apply this to a concrete scenario. Oatwave is a plant-based oat milk brand that wants to segment category buyers based on their actual purchasing and usage behavior, not attitudes or preferences, but what they actually do. They design 5 categorical responses. First, how often do you buy plant-based milk? Daily, weekly, monthly, or rarely? Second, do you buy multiple brands or stick to one? Third, where do you primarily buy it? Fourth, Do you recommend plant-based milk to others? And fifth, have you switched brands in the last 6 months? Those 5 questions, with their discrete answer categories, are input to LCA. Here's what the data actually looks like. Every respondent answers all 5 questions and produces a specific pattern. Take 2 contrasting examples. Respondent A buys weekly, only one brand, primarily grocery, yes to recommending, no to switching. Respondent B buys monthly, multiple brands, multiple channels, no to recommending, yes to switching. Those 2 respondents look like completely different types of plant-based milk buyers, even before you run any analysis. LCA takes all of those individual response patterns across all respondents simultaneously and finds the hidden classes that best explain why the patterns look the way they do. The first decision is how many latent classes to keep, and in LCA, the standard tool for making that decision is the BIC, or Bayesian Information Criterion. The BIC measures how well the model fits the data while penalizing unnecessary complexity. A lower BIC is better. The way you run it, run LCA for 2 classes, 3, 4, and 5, and calculate the BIC each time. Plot those values and look for where adding another class stops meaningfully improving the fit, where the curve bends and flattens. For OatWave, the BIC drops significantly from 2 classes to 3, drops less from 3 to 4, and barely changes from 4 to 5. The bend is clearly at 3 latent classes. Here's the core output of the LCA, the class profile table. It shows the probability that a member of each class gave each possible answer to each question. For OatWave's 3 classes, Committed Loyalists, but weekly at 89% probability, stick to one brand at 78%, shop grocery at 82%, recommend at 91%, and have switched recently at only 12%. Casual Explorers buy weekly at only 34%, stick to one brand at 23%, recommend at 38%, and have switched recently at 67%. Engaged Seekers fall in between, regular but not daily buyers, somewhat loyal, specialty channel shoppers, strong recommenders, occasional switchers. Each column is a complete portrait of one type of plant-based milk buyer, built entirely from probabilities. Now you read each column of the profile table and ask, what type of person has these probabilities? For Class 1, 89% biweekly, 78% loyal to one brand, 91% recommend, 12% switching. The pattern is unmistakably a committed, loyal, enthusiastic core buyer. Call them Committed Loyalists. For Class 2, 34% weekly, 23% brand loyal, 38% recommend, 67% switching. This is an infrequent, brand-agnostic, exploratory buyer. Call them Casual Explorers. For Class 3, 61% weekly, 55% brand loyal, 72% recommend, specialty channel shopper. This is a health-conscious, engaged buyer who's open to new brands but has genuine preferences. Call them Engaged Seekers. The names come from what the probabilities describe. The algorithm gives you the number. You provide the interpretation. Here's what the probability assignments look like for individual respondents. Most respondents have a high probability on one class and low probabilities on the others. They're clearly one type, but some respondents sit more ambiguously between types. Imagine a respondent who buys weekly and recommends enthusiastically. That sounds Committed Loyalist, but also shops specialty channels and has switched brands twice in the last year. That sounds more like an Engaged Seeker. Their assignment might be 55% Committed Loyalist and 35% Engaged Seeker. LCA handles that ambiguity honestly rather than forcing a choice. For practical reporting, you assign each respondent to their most probable class, but you remember the boundaries between types are soft, not hard. Once the classes are identified and respondents are probabilistically assigned, you layer on additional information to make the profiles richer and more actionable. For O-Wave, profiling the three classes on demographics and attitudes reveals this. Committed Loyalists skew female, 35 to 54, higher income. They're established to their habits, and O-Wave is already their primary brand. Casual Explorers skew younger, more price sensitive, with low brand attachment across the whole category, not just to O-Wave. And Engaged Seekers skew health conscious, shop specialty channels, and are open to premium products. The profile most likely to respond to a premium barista variant. Those additional profiles are what makes the segment actionable for marketing, product, and retail decisions. Three classes, three different strategic approaches. For Committed Loyalists, protect the base. These are O-Wave's most loyal, most enthusiastic customers, the ones who drive the word of mouth and stable repeat revenue. The priority is loyalty mechanics, subscription incentives, and early access to new products that reward and deepen their commitment. For Casual Explorers, convert the opportunity. These buyers are in the category but haven't committed to any brands. A compelling trial promotion, a sampling program, or a simple brand message that gives them one clear reason to choose O-Wave could start converting occasional purchases into regular ones. And for engagement seekers, capture the premium. Their health consciousness, specialty channel behavior, and recommendation tendency make them the most likely adopters of a barista-grade premium variant, if O-Wave can reach them where they shop. Let's be balanced. The strengths of LCA are significant. It handles categorical data naturally, better than K-means, which wasn't designed for it. The probabilistic assignments are more realistic than hard cluster memberships and acknowledge genuine ambiguity in how real people behave. It often produces cleaner, more interpretable segments from behavioral data, and it's widely used in academic research and increasingly in advanced commercial research. The limitations are equally real. LCA requires specialized statistical software. It's not available in standard Excel or basic survey tools. Choosing the number of classes still requires judgment along the BIC. Probabilistic outputs can be harder to explain to non-technical stakeholders than a simple "you're in segment 3", and it requires a meaningful sample size, typically 300 or more respondents, for stable class solutions. 6 things to take with you. LCA finds hidden classes in categorical survey data, types of people inferred from their observable behavior patterns. Unlike cluster analysis, it assigns probabilities rather than hard segment memberships, which is a more honest model of how people actually behave. The class profile table, showing the probability of each answer for each class, is how you interpret and name the segments. Use the BIC to guide the number of classes and look for the bend in the curve where adding another class stops meaningfully improving the fit. Layer demographics and attitudes on the top of the LCA classes after the analysis to make the segments actionable. And use LCA when your segmentation data is categorical and behavioral. It handles that data more naturally and often more cleanly than K-means cluster analysis. Thank you for watching.